Greetings, everyone. This is Tom Herbert again with Harvest Network. I have the privilege of being the National Field Director for Harvest Network, and part of that responsibility is to help the network. And so today we have Pastor Brad Kehn, who is the lead pastor at Church of the Good Shepherd in Wayne, Ohio. Many of you know him already, but some of you may not. Brad has been a longtime member of Harvest Network, and their church there in Ohio, Northwest Ohio, has hosted our annual assembly a few times. Always amazing hosts, and we look forward to being back there again sometime soon. But I wanted to have Brad join us on this video so that he could share with you just some of what he has been going through for the past 6 months or so. Brad had some serious medical issues and is recovering from some major surgery. And as I talked with him on the phone a few weeks ago, was just really impressed by how he has really faced this diagnosis, but also faced all of that he has had to go through in the process of surgeries and doctor's appointments and recovery and rehabilitation. But he's faced it with such courage, but also faith. And so I asked Brad if he would join us for a few minutes today just to tell us a little bit about this part of his story. So Brad, why don't you update everybody on what's been taking place in your life?
Well, it was really the end of last summer, and I was kind of dealing with a side back pain. It kind of radiated around and wasn't really sure what it was. And kind of dealt with it for a while. My wife was going through, a medical thing of her own and had to have surgery, and tried to kind of get her through that and recovered. And I really, first of all, I give, all the glory and honor to God for, being where I'm at today. Ultimately, he's the great physician, he's our healer, but I also give my wife a lot of credit because she made the comment one night going to bed when I was just kind of muscling through it. And she said, she goes, I'd really hate for this to be something that we could, that could have gotten fixed, but you didn't go to the doctor and just tried to do the guy thing and muscle through it. And it was just really a conviction from the Lord that came over to me in that moment. And I just really felt quicken in my spirit. You know what? Yeah, I need to go into the doctor and get this checked out. So I think that was around September or whatever. Went to the doctor. They did an ultrasound, thinking maybe it was my gallbladder. Could have had a nerve going on as well, and really that issue's still undiagnosed completely to this day. I think it's just a God thing that got me in. So I went from an ultrasound to then having to get a HIDA scan done, to all of those things coming back clear, all those tests being good, to then my doctor's like, well, why don't we get you an endoscopy and a colonoscopy done, and do it, being the end of the year, and everybody was trying to get those things in that could, because they'd met their deductibles on their insurance. I couldn't get in until the beginning of January, and so I went in the beginning of January and got a colonoscopy done. And I turned 50 this year, and I guess you can get colonoscopies now at 45, and I didn't know that. So I encourage everybody now, if you can get a colonoscopy and you're of that point in life, go get one, because they really can save your life. And so had a colonoscopy done back on January 7th. And the doctor took out, I think, 4 or 5 polyps, and one was pretty large, but he said he didn't think there's anything to worry about. They can usually tell if something's cancerous. And about 9-10 days later, the 17th of January, I was in my office about 10:30 in the morning, and a phone call came in, and I saw it was from the doctor's office. And so that kind of threw a little bit of fear and anxiety into me right away, because I'm like, why is the doctor's office calling? It was the doctor that did the colonoscopy, and let me know that the end of one of the polyps, the big polyp, had cancer on it. And so that started a life-changing journey, really. This was one of those years. One of our kids is moving out here in just over a month, and my wife and I will celebrate our 30th wedding anniversary and turned 50 this year. So had a lot of cool major life markers that I was kind of looking forward to, and all of a sudden everything kind of turned upside down in a moment. But I really as I look at this story and have thought, I've been sharing with my church, all along as we've gone through this and we've walked through this together. Um, and, I really call this, someday if I just do a whole sermon on it, I'd call it the goodness of God. And the reason why I'd say that is it's not good to get cancer, and it's not good to go through what I've been through, but you can see God's hand in this whole process. From getting the call, that doctor that did that set me up with his assistants, and he had people that he recommended right away, and some of them were the best of the best. And it was one of those things where oftentimes it's weeks to get into people, or even months. And had the receptionist call me from the oncology office within about 20 minutes after the call with the colonoscopy doctor. And as he was talking to me, something opened up for the very next morning. So the very next morning, I was meeting with an oncologist and doing blood work. And then a day later, I was going in and getting a CT scan done. And then within 5 days, really got what we believe is the best surgeon in this area. Has just been nothing but highly recommended by everybody that we came in contact with. And that's why I call it the goodness of God, because God's hand was on this whole situation, from the very beginning. And I'd love to say that I've walked this out as you introduce this statement, with just, great faith and but there's been a lot of moments of doubt and fear and anxiety and worry, as well as we've walked through this as individually, but as a family, and with my wife, and as a church. It's one of those things where there's all those things come together. You walk by faith, but that doesn't mean that you don't struggle as you go through it
Absolutely.
as well.
So you had then your pretty major surgery. Was that in March that you had your
No,
surgery?
that was just God. So within that time frame of getting a CT scan right away, then by the end of January, had to have another colonoscopy done by the surgeon that was doing the surgery, and he actually went in and I got my first tattoo. So that's what I like to say. He went in and tattooed that spot. So that way, when they went in from my abdomen, they were able to see the location right away. And so he tattooed that spot in case surgery was needed, and he did his colonoscopy on me. Then we met with him. But what the surgeon did is when we first met with him the first time and scheduled everything, he scheduled surgery as well, just in case surgery was going to be needed. So right away, February 12th, less than a month after diagnosis, and just over a month from the first colonoscopy, I was in having major surgery, and I don't know exactly how much they took out. It was going to be up to a foot, 8, 10, 12 inches, whatever it was. They took that out. They took out 22 lymph nodes, and spent a week in the hospital, and really probably the hardest thing I've been through in my life. I've never been through that kind of pain, I'll tell you that. That's for
Wow.
sure. So I've
Wow.
always wondered what a 10 pain was on a scale, and I hit that night after surgery, and never never want to hit a 10
Eh,
on pain again. So
wow. Wow. So yeah, when we were talking on the phone the other day, we were just kind of you were just sharing some of the things that you have really just learned personally, but have been reflecting on for your personal life. And we'll talk about ministry in a second as well. But why don't you just share, what has the Lord been teaching you personally
right.
as you've gone through this?
Well, I think one of the many things is just really a sense of gratitude, thankfulness for life. I think it's easy to get caught up in the rat race of life and ministry, and I know certainly I was. I mean, life and ministry and kids and family, everything is busy, and you don't always have time to just, I guess, be thankful for what you have, if that makes any sense.
Hmm.
It might not, if I don't. I was always thankful for what I had, but in a moment's notice, when it looks like everything could be gone, when you get a diagnosis, cancer is one of the things that I think everybody kind of hopes that they never get a diagnosis like that. It took me a long time to even say that word. I used to say the C word when I was first diagnosed with it. Didn't even want to
Yeah.
say that word. because it just does something to you. You think about death, you think about different things, but it also causes you to reflect on life, and again, having thankfulness and just gratitude for what you have, for your life personally, for your family, for your wife, for your ministry, the chance to be able to to be able to preach and lead people and love on people. And as we went through this whole process, one of the great things with after the surgery was done and over with, what we were hoping for is that no cancer would be found, and that's exactly what it was. So the colon tissue that was taken out, the 22 lymph nodes that was taken out, there was no cancer in anything, which is what we had hoped for. And the surgeon had said, from a medical standpoint, to do the surgery, you have a 90% rate of survival. And so, after everything was done, and we talked about that, and it's your human mind wants to go, what about the 10%? Even though it's only 10%, your human mind goes
Sure.
to one of those what ifs, and
Yeah.
you can't go there. You have to take authority over that. But the surgeon, I'd shared with him many times just about the Lord, and he had told me his mom was a surgeon and would often pray going into surgery that God would guide her hands. And I told him the first time I met him, I said, "Well, Doc," I said, that's what I prayed for you before I met you today, that God would guide your thoughts, that we would do the right thing here, and really feel like that was part, again, God's goodness in our life, that we had this doctor that we had." And he shared with me after the surgery, he goes, "You need to understand how fortunate you are." I said, "No, I do." And he goes, "No," he goes, "I really want you to understand how fortunate you are." He goes, "You've mentioned many times about God as we've gone through this process." And he goes, "You have way too many coincidences that happened in your life for this not to be God." And so I thought that
Wow.
was pretty cool that the surgeon himself said that. And again, it goes back to having something else that was undiagnosed, a pain that was different. Because he told me, if I'd have come in a couple years from now, we'd have been having a totally different conversation. If this, whatever this pain has been, and I still have sometimes, if we hadn't come in. And then
Wow.
he said that I really needed to be thankful that the doctor that did the colonoscopy on me used the clips to help close up where they had resected the polyp from. He said, because if he hadn't used clips, when he went in and did the colonoscopy on me before surgery, he would not have known where that polyp was. And the reason why is a colon kind of looks kind of like a music note type of thing. But that's, they kind of ebb and flow and have different twists and bends and turns, and my colon on the left side of my body, where the transcending colon goes into the descending colon, actually kind of makes an extra bend in a loop. And so it was all written up that the cancer, the polyp, was in the descending colon, but it wasn't. It was still in the transverse colon. And
Wow.
so if the doctor that did the colonoscopy hadn't put the clips in, and then I hadn't had a CT scan right away, because 3 weeks later, by the time the surgeon had done his scan on me, those clips had already passed out. They wouldn't have known where that spot was at. He was able to go in and find the scar tissue because of the CT scan. So he was able to go to that spot and found it. And he said, again, he goes, "That's another thing." He goes, that had to be God. He goes, "Because otherwise you'd have probably had the surgery and we wouldn't have taken the right spot out, the spot that was actually bad."
That's incredible.
So there's just all these things where, even in the middle of really, in a way, tragedy, when you go through something bad like that, we've just seen God's hand in that. And so just gratitude, and just being thankful for life and ministry is just something that God's really shown me. Even in the middle of bad, God is there, and
Yeah.
God is good, and just continuing to believe for a full healing. Humility, that's been a huge one. I've never really felt like I was a prideful person. I'm always one to seek out other people's opinions and ideas and things. But you get humbled in a different way in a surgery like this, when you can't take care of yourself. I mean, physically, I was unable to take care of myself. After surgery, sitting in a hospital bed, usually you're the person that, people come to for, if they need help or counsel or ministry. And, I've always been a big, strong guy, so always able to do anything that I've needed to do. And then you can't do your own basic tasks.
Yeah.
For a month, I couldn't get in or out of bed without my wife's help. I couldn't put my socks on. You couldn't do you just couldn't do anything. So humility, just that in a different level of realizing that, whoever we are, things can be taken away from us, in just a moment's notice. So humility's been a big lesson. Patience with myself, patience with others. I think that's been just a different level of trying to learn patience. I mean, even now I've got, most things I can't do yet. I'm still limited now, 3.5 months almost post surgery. I'm still limited to only whatever I can lift within reason with one hand. I'm not allowed to bend over and pick things up. I can't use two hands to pick things up. It's, picking up a milk jug or, whatever I can within reason. That's about all I can do. And so, really just your importance of community as well, your church community, and just your friend network, because there's not a lot that I can't do as you go through life, especially being a guy, and you got projects and things you want to do around the house. We had a major storm come through and do some damage to our property in the middle of this right after I got home, and having neighbors and church people just showing up with chainsaws and just ready to help and asking what they needed to do, to help, because there was nothing I could have done. And so just the importance of community, and then asking for help. But I'm still not good at that. It's hard to call someone that's got to drive 15 minutes to help you with a 20-minute task. But you learn to ask for help. And again, that's part of the humility process and patience of waiting. The importance of prayer on more of a global scale. Not only did we have our church and multiple churches and Harvest Network and people praying, but I got a hold of our internationals, our missionaries. That's one of the things I love about our international community and Harvest Network is they know how to pray. And so, I reached out to them, and some of them have vast prayer networks in and of themselves. And so, I
Yes.
mean, we literally had thousands, if not tens of thousands of people praying. And so you feel that, and that's huge. And I think that one of the bigger lessons as well that I've learned is I've always been a pretty healthy person, never had to take medication. Like I said, 49, almost 50 years old, and just a greater sense of empathy and compassion for those that are going through surgeries or through chronic illness. I think one of the challenges in my situation, and I had someone just yesterday says, "Wow, you look really good. I wouldn't know anything was wrong with you if I didn't know." And I think that's one of the hardest things is you can't function. I'm probably only at about a 75% function, as far as health wise, but yet you don't know that. And I think, there are people in our churches and in our lives that function like that chronically for maybe even their whole life. And, I'm still believing here for a full recovery. And so just understanding and having more, just more empathy and compassion
Empathy,
for
yeah.
people that are working through those things in life as well. So,
And that really is a good transition point, because these are things you've learned personally, but so much of it also transfers to your leadership as a lead pastor. What are some things that you have learned about yourself, or maybe about leading a local church when you go through something this significant? That really does force you to change the way that you lead, because you're
right,
leading from home. You're leading from a place of weakness. You can't just pick up and do it yourself, as they say. It's
right.
sometimes it's easier just to do it yourself. Well, sometimes you can't do it yourself, and that's the way it's been for you for 3.5 months. But what are some things that you've learned pastorally or as a leader in this process?
Well, I feel like it's an ongoing process. I kind of feel like there's this metamorphosis
Yeah.
stage that I'm really in right now. I don't think that I've learned it all. It's a process. Just, this whole recovery takes up to a year. I've still got a couple 2-3 months of being limited to what I can do that I know of right now coming up, at least probably through the summer. So I think that leading from a place of weakness, I'm still there. Like you said, you can't do it all. but I think it's important as a, pastorally that we build our teams in our churches. It's one of the things that I'm thankful for is where we were at with our leadership development and the amazing leaders that we have here that are in positions to serve and to lead. And then our church body has been amazing through this process. So I think it's important that we can be as healthy structurally as we can, to be as healthy as we can with our leadership teams. And there's things that I see where we need to grow and I need to do better on. But I think having that in place, because honestly, the church end of things was probably the easiest thing to do. When I got the diagnosis and knew I was going to have surgery, I got a hold of my elders and deacons and my associate pastor, youth pastor, and we called an emergency meeting that night. And I spent about 30 minutes with them, letting them know what was going on and what the future looked like, and probably spent 5 to 10 minutes discussing church, and everything was set for like the next. I was out 7 weeks. Everything was set from a preaching standpoint, leadership standpoint. And I didn't really have to worry about that.
Yeah,
Was
having those leaders in place, equipped, trained, the support network there for them was huge. Yeah, I'm sure that was a big part of it. Yeah,
Yeah, it was big. So that I think that's important as leaders that, we set up teams, that's one of our mottos around here, and everybody knows it. It's all about team. It's a team mentality. And you have to have team. It can't be about us as the leader. It has to be about the Lord. It has to be about serving others. It has to be about developing your leaders for their own development, not even just for leading in the
right.
church. And so,
Exactly.
that's huge. That's a lesson. The other thing for me personally is, I've probably always been overly involved in the community, in church, in ways where it's been good, but sometimes, how do you dial things back, I think, is the hard thing. Sometimes I've run life without margin, and I vocalize that, and you don't know how to make that stop. And all of a sudden, when you're in a position like this, a lot of those things stop. And so I've been going through just an evaluation process of what things I should continue doing, things maybe I shouldn't continue doing. Those are big things, because I've told my wife I don't want to be, you can't keep running 100 miles an hour. I'm hitting an age in life where I can't keep running 100 miles an hour. It's not physically healthy, but then, just even spiritually. And so how do I, as ministry has picked back up and really never slowed down, but as I picked back up into the middle of it, I vocalize it to my church. Remember, if it was last Sunday or the Sunday before, what I'm trying to do is how can I have maximum kingdom impact, but yet not run 100 miles an hour?
Yeah.
How can I go deeper in my home with my family, with my wife? How can I go deeper in relationships with other people that are, in a small group, or just other friends or church people that are friends? Dig deeper into their lives. I think there's always more ministry to be done. There's always more ministry opportunities that can happen. And so really, really identifying what are those things that I need to do going forward, and even try to help create that culture at church. Because if anything, people have seen me doing 20 different things at one time, and maybe try to do that themselves, and how to dial back from that, and just do exactly what God is called us to do. And saying no is a hard thing. Learning to say no. I had to say no to a community event last weekend that I was invited to go and participate in, the Memorial Day weekend, and it just not healthy enough for it yet. Already had something going on with family, and it's one of those things that maybe in the past I said, well, family won't miss me for a couple hours, but I said, no, we've got this time set aside. We need to keep it. So those are some of the lessons,
Yeah.
personally and ministry wise as well, that I'm learning right now.
Yeah, that's so good. I was reading this past week in the book of Acts when Paul began. It's funny. It says Paul begins his first missionary journey, but then it says they set apart Paul and Barnabas to go. It was always a they. It was always team. Even in the
Right.
New Testament, there's team, and it's
Right.
so important for us to build that in our churches and in our ministries, where we're raising up leaders, mentoring them, but then allowing them to function as a team. So powerful. And look at the fruit that you had when this crisis came into your life, those teams were able to carry the ministry
Right.
forward. So that's so
Right.
good.
Yeah, I think the one other thing that's really been big to me, and one of the things I had to do in this was just really repent of it, was just not taking a Sabbath. And I know I talked with you about that a few weeks ago, and staying busy and in ministry, sometimes it's hard to pick that Sabbath day because it can't be Sunday, obviously,
Yeah.
and but just really trying to move to a point where eventually get my wife's and I schedule on the same day even, but just to have a day that is a Sabbath day, that unless there's an absolute emergency, we don't pick something up, and if we do, try to find a different day in the week that can be a Sabbath day, because
Right.
that's really not something in all my 26, 27, my 28 years of ministry, whatever it is now, have really done a good job at. And that's something that I really had been feeling convicted of. And so, again, this is one of those things that has caused me to stop and really repent of that and say, okay, Lord, I do need to take a day and keep it holy as your word says, and to have a Sabbath. And I know a lot of pastors that don't do that, and I was definitely one of them. And so that is something that I'm definitely working on, doing that. I think it's so important to, obviously God says in His Word, but just realizing that in a different way.
Yeah. Hey, Brad, thank you. Thank you for taking a few minutes to share with us today. And I'm sure we'll all be looking forward to hearing and seeing you get back to full strength and continue the work that God's called you to there in Northwest Ohio. God bless.
God bless. Thank you, Tom.